The 40 billion bits essentially all comes from life experience, what's happened in this lifetime. And it filters out everything except this tiny, tiny sliver. And that tiny sliver is what has kept us alive. What we pay attention to is never going to be outside what is programmed into that 2000 bits, simply because they're the most important 2000 bits to the conscious mind from the perspective of our personality. So this is just within the scope of this lifetime. There's all this other information that we have filtered out, yet is still there. We can still have access to it. We can still tune into it. Hi everyone, welcome to the Soul Shift series. Today with special guest again, Pete Smith, and myself, Mike Mantic, and let's dive in. So Pete, we wanted to talk about the factors of our consciousness that relate to, we talked about quantum reality or quantum consciousness before. How do these relate to developing, all these other theories of ultimate consciousness and all the decision points that we make and sliding doors? Gwyneth Paltrow, over to you, fire away.
Well, alternate consciousness, as we refer to it, Mike, is something that is gaining momentum in conversation with lots of people. And it all started back in 1957 when a guy by the name of Hugh Everett put forward a dissertation. And he argued that rather than the wave function collapsing into a reality, it stayed in its superposition, and it then started to move out into all of these different types of scenarios, that the other possibilities were still there. And it would make sense because they tell us that subatomic particles are empty, and they can't be really. I mean, they feel pretty full when you look at a solid matter, but what are they full of? I wonder if they're full of our potentials. So whenever it put this idea forward, he put it forward on the basis that the multiverse continues to grow. With every decision that we take and we go in those two directions, they all create other realities. The beauty of that is that people think they're outside of our line of sight, but we're quantumly entangled with these other versions of ourselves. So why shouldn't we have a conversation with them?
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly, I joked about Gwyneth Paltrow before because of the movie Sliding Doors, right? Which
Yep.
lots of people get, especially if you've seen it, you'll know the topical relevance to this conversation. But I joked about it because those two things went out in that storyline as two separate timelines. And I wonder, is that the case? Or is it that all of those go out as potential? And then what we're actually focusing on is the thing that gets all the energy. So this higher point. And as we do so, as we focus on all these possibilities, as we focus on these connections, that those are more likely to become real. Thoughts?
Well, even in Life Between Lives work, when people go back to spirit after an incarnation and go to the place where they reside between incarnations, we've had clients report that they could go to some sort of a place where they could play out other options of how things may have unfolded. Now, whether that's other levels of the Akashic record that they're in, that they have their own personal library card for, as the soul that did it, whether that's something that is pulling on the multiverse, it's unclear. But at the end of the day, the information comes. With alternate realities, as I see them, and these are mathematically proven in things like string theory, for example, M theory, that works when you do the maths. The maths comes out great. Not that I'm the one that wants to check the maths on that, but there's 11 dimensions in M theory, which was the amalgamation of 5 versions of string theory that Ed Witten put together in 1995. I mean, the maths checks out. So if you look at that, you look at the many worlds interpretation, quantum physicists are starting to say that this reality is simply one thought amongst many, and that we might be playing out these scenarios for our own learning and experience. But the universe is multi-layered, interdimensional, all sitting on an infrastructure of energy. And when we learn to read that play with it and learn from it, life takes on a whole different level of existence.
Yeah, and I love that you mentioned the maths because I'm not a maths geek either, right? But what I'm always looking for is how do we shift that? See, working out the maths is one level, um, but actually having that direct experience of those differences is a very different. It has very different connotations. It allows for a lot more personal change, and I love this because when I work with people at this level, it is the unfolding of their direct experience into these realms and what their life could be if they focused on this or that, versus just giving a bunch of math data, if you like. So it's a very big difference. And the other thing that I want to raise, given that we're talking numbers, is that we often hear, like, you can look up on the internet, the internet claims that we conscious mind takes in about 40-50 bits of information a second, and the unconscious mind around 11 million. The movie, I think it was The Secret or something like that, they talked about 2,000 bits per second versus 400 billion. So it's quite different depending on who you go and talk to, but it is, either way, it is a huge difference in the discrepancy between the conscious mind and the unconscious mind. But when we go into this space, it's like a third level, because that is all mind, mind, mind. What is the mind filtering? This is what mind accepting. And what I love about doing this kind of work on a consciousness level with people is getting the wisdom available to them that has no relevance to their current life. Like the 400 billion versus 2000 or whatever it is you want to look at is all this lifetime. But when you go into this higher level consciousness and really tap into what is possible, um, those things are just the mind. That's what's here. What is out there is so different. It's so much more expanded.
Absolutely. And, given that we're not mathematicians, I'll draw back to logic. And Einstein told us that time and space is an illusion. He regarded them as ways in which we think rather than in ways in which we exist. And if you look at the fact that, I'm 59 years of age, I'm going to make a lot of decisions over the next 5 years. But if I reach forward in time and my decisions will do these forks in the road, so I'll look like something like a spider web unfolding as, if you put linear time up against it. Now, if I've got something I want to be in 5 years' time, and if I move outside of time and space and I claim that vibrational frequency for that state of being that I seek to be, and I pull that into the now, and I go like a wormhole straight to that frequency, pull it in, blend with that version of myself, I'm wiping out all other, potentially, I'm wiping out all other low vibrational realities, and I'm making him my self-fulfilling prophecy, and I make a beeline for that reality, scooting through all of those decision points that lead me to him. Now, if that's a shortcut through the multiverse and it's something that's available to people to start to access, I mean, why would we not start to live in a multidimensional way rather than make all these decisions at these forks in the road that might go the other way? And I get that there's an overall learning thing that creates these forks in the road, and we go in both directions anyway, so that we can learn. Multidimensional beings learn in a multiverse. That makes logic sense as well. But for me and for the people that we're looking after and helping, Mike, why don't we just go for that? We pull that in, we blend them together, and we offer them a life that's forever changed.
Yeah, and it's a much simpler way to go about that, because we are, infinite universe, infinite potential, infinite directions, but that locks us down into what it is that we're bringing down from the highest.
Yeah.
And interestingly, I know the last time that I went through this, we with deliberation we stay within this lifetime. And yet when I've gone through this with other clients, sometimes we felt like that wasn't the case. We went way out into whoever they could be and brought that down. So it is really like there's a lot of scope with where you can go with this, and it's just it is so transformational and profound for people. It is beautiful work.
Well, the working landscape is the multiverse with all of the dimensions, the quantum consciousness realms of alternate realities, parallel realities, interdimensional consciousness. The soul's complicit in all of this as well and can take us further out into the spiritual realm at any time. So if we as a facilitator hold that space, that enables a client to then travel wherever they need to go in the multiverse to find the solution to whatever they need to, or to find the wisdom that awaits through exploration. Why wouldn't we just do that? Isn't that what advanced civilizations out in the universe would do? Wouldn't they just work multidimensionally?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely think so. Yeah, absolutely think so. But the beautiful thing I like about this, and this is why I joke that it's just kind of my fun zone with working with people, is that it takes people into a space where their consciousness is really tapping into whatever highest wisdom is right for them. Yeah. So, and so what this also does, I think, is that it overlaps how we are in this world, like in terms of paying attention to our intuition, that higher calling, the way we make decisions at all of these key points. But if you've got a target in mind, whether you're consciously aware of it or not,
Hmm.
I think that you will naturally have that propensity to move in that direction. You will make decisions that keep you going there, and importantly, I think make decisions that keep you going there as quickly as possible.
It's like we set the radio dial for that particular frequency through the intention that we set. And if we set an intention for me to be in the optimal health or the best possible, vibrational condition, or to, whatever it might be, a high vibrational intention that we set, when we hold that in our energy field, we start to attract towards us the things out of the universe that match it. That's quantum entanglement.
Mm.
That's such a strongly proven subject in quantum circles that we entangle with things of a similar vibrational frequency. We call them to us through quantum entanglement. The power of this is incredible for personal health or any form of wellness, whether it be emotional, physical, spiritual, whatever it can be. All we have to do, Mike, is to break our conditioning about this 3D box that we're in. And whilst our body may be, our consciousness is transportable. We know that. You and I have seen it so many times working with the people that we have, that consciousness surfs the universe under the hands of the right facilitator. And this is what we've brought to the planet for these times. The old systems aren't working anymore. They're falling apart. It needs to be replaced with something that's more progressive and really sees people for who they really are.
Yeah. The beautiful thing I find in this discussion too, in just the way you've talked about that, is that you people are naturally going to be scared, if you like, because what they have up until now is everything that they've learned and everything that's kept them alive, right? It's the body's intelligence, it's the ego personality. And so I was doing a session with a client this morning, and it was almost like the current reality was this balance board of trying like a little kid on a balance board, trying to find this perfect sense of balance because all of this stuff has kept them alive, so they don't want to let it go. Because as far as the body intelligence is concerned, that's dead, right? And yet, what was really obvious was that this higher level stuff is so supersedes it that we don't need to balance per se. We and this is where people I think are going to get that scared kind of action where they're trying to maintain their life and bring on the new, and that's never going to work, right? There's an aspect to which, if we just allow and surrender to who we truly are, and then see what comes, and that has a whole different, higher level, I think, sense of information, and what decision, how to make decisions, and where to put your energy and all of that. And I think that that's one of those things where, I think we spoke the other day about how 95% of human energy is wasted. And yet, when we do this, like even if it's 90% that we're wasting, we have doubled our productivity simply by focusing on what's actually important.
Yeah.
So it's a beautiful step to make, to source your information from there.
And if you can create an intention of anything that transcends your conditioning, I mean, we've been told we're part of a society and you have to do this and you have to do that and you have to do this and you have to do that. And that's what a good life is like. Well, the message that we're sending to anyone who's listening is that's not who you are. That's the societal conditioning. It might be some familial conditioning there as well from family. This is how your life should map out. We all had that chat growing up with our mum and dad. But, at the end of the day, what is the life that you most want to create? And once you spot your conditioning for what it is, it's no longer conditioning, because by its very nature, conditioning is invisible because we're conditioned not to see it. And we're conditioned to say that's what life's like. Like, who's the good guys? Who's the bad guys in the world? This is the right thing. This is the wrong thing. All of that is conditioning. And, I really want to encourage people to go with personal experience and to find the resonance in their journey that takes them onward. Because when you're on the right path, it feels right. I don't think I'm supposed to be doing this job anymore. This relationship's not working for me. All of those are aspects of your resonance coming to the fore, leading you in the direction in which you need to go.
Yeah, absolutely. I hear that. The other thing I think is that this so circling back to this notion of whatever it is, let's go with the 2000 bits versus 40 billion bits, is that if we look at that in terms of where we picked up information, because the 40 billion bits essentially all comes from life experience, what's happened in this lifetime, not necessarily consciously, but everything that we picked up, right? It's like a perfect recall. And it filters out everything except this tiny, tiny sliver. And that tiny sliver is what has kept us alive, right? What makes us feel either loved or safe, or do you know what I mean? Even if it's not loved and safe, it is. Because it's alive. We're still alive in that moment. And these things, that what we pay attention to is never going to be outside what is programmed into that 2000 bits, simply because they're the most important 2000 bits to the conscious mind from the perspective of our personality. So there's all of this other information. So this is just within the scope of this lifetime. There's all this other information that we have filtered out, yet is still there. We can still have access to it. We can still tune into it. And I think that's huge, because it is one of those things where, if I was your dad and I said, Peter, you're in trouble. I don't want you to pay attention to that girl anymore. She's bad news, right? You're going to make all these associations, and those associations are going to filter out any paying attention to that from there on in, assuming you're doing as you're told, right? Or they're going to do the other way, right? And not pay attention to authority. These are all things, these are the ways that we play these things out.
Mm.
And yet, when we truly step into what is above that higher level, I think we have this scope of playing with or understanding who are we, and who was that girl down the road, or who was the dad, what was driving them, um, what made them say the things that they said that got you in trouble? Why did they get, you just start to see these layers that just go deeper and deeper and deeper, and yet they have less and less impact on your life because it's just data, you know.
And if we bring the multiverse into that scenario, and we say, well, what happened to the Pete that stayed with that girl versus the Pete that didn't stay with that girl? And what happened to the dad that chose to have that conversation and the dad that chose not to have that conversation? And you start to get these other avenues of learning that come up. And I'm wondering if it might be helpful for people listening to tell a multiverse story.
Go on.
And this one's, I've actually used this one as a case study in the quantum consciousness book, but there was a fellow I worked with who had been a really fantastic DJ back many years ago, when the whole nightlife was happening in Melbourne. And he went down a path where he had a partner, they were doing all these huge gigs, they were making good money, and he chose to step away. And he always wondered what would have happened to me who had stayed. And I said, well, let's test this. Let's go back to that decision point. So we went back, and because he's quantum entangled with himself, of course, he can access the other timeline, and he visited a session of this other timeline where the other him was lying in hospital, dying. And he asked him for his story, and he sat next to him and he held his hand and he asked him for his story. And he said that he'd stayed in the nightclub scene. It had got pretty seedy. And in the end, he'd been poisoned.
Oh.
And they found out too late. And he held his own hand while he died. Okay, so what that did for him was that justified his leaving that industry at that point in time. And I want to say to people that not everything is a deep and rich experience as that one. When we put something in a book, we always have a top end type case that we work with. But we've had so many people meet other versions of themselves, understanding what they can learn from each other at this point. At the end of his life, that younger version of this person took great heart that there was another part of him that would live on and had made the right decision when the time came. So they gave him hope as he crossed over. And with the client in our timeline here, they gave him the validation that he needed to know that he made a great decision many years back. And that can be the power of this work.
Yeah. And so that's kind of in retrospect. And what about the decisions coming up?
Well, another story, a quick one.
Yeah.
I had someone who come to me quite troubled. He was the CEO of a waste management company, and he had a very difficult decision to make. And I'd done some other work with him over the years. He came back to me for this particular one. He says, I don't know if you can help me with this, but he was caught in between the Environmental Protection Authority and his client. And he knew that they were disposing of their waste illegally. So his client was a large percentage of his business. So he wanted to understand, do I go to the EPA and do I tell them and lose this customer? Or do I support this customer and look after my own people in the company and take the risk? So we went into a scenario as to a few years out what was going to happen, because he was weighed down by this decision. It was a really difficult one because it involved so many other people. And he came out of that scenario once we'd visited the future, both of those scenarios, went down both timelines and had a look. And he came back incredibly relieved. And he said, I have nothing to do. I said, what about the decision? He says, I don't need to make a decision because what's going to happen is inevitable no matter which timeline I go to.
Oh, right.
So he was, if you like, exonerated. This was an outcome I wasn't expecting. He was exonerated from that big decision because it was only heading in one direction anyway.
Yeah.
So I won't say what that was because, people may know this story if they're local to some aspects of Melbourne. But, this was a very difficult scenario for him. Then he was relieved of that responsibility. The universe was going to take care of it anyway.
Beautiful. Yeah. Yeah, I wasn't expecting you to say that either.
I love the unexpected. That's what we get when we do this work. Anything can happen. I mean, our role is simply to support our client in the pursuit of what it is that they wish to explore.
Yeah, and I've got another client that I work with who has been dealing with gurus, I don't know, for decades, and this aspect of her is just, it's funny because we did this we did this session, like this kind of session quite some time ago. And I'm watching that actually start to unfold in the real world as she keeps coming back with the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And what we picked up in that session is unfolding in a way that could not have been predicted by her.
Mm.
Um, and yet there it is, it's this consciousness is just taking flight in all of these different ways in different directions, and just becoming simpler and simpler. And that's a perfect example of that, like coming to be more and more efficient, more and more focused on the truth, and less worried about what other people think, how things are going to play out, because what's actually unfolding is the truth, and people are responding to that, not what she thought the truth might respond to.
Yeah, absolutely. And as soon as you mention the gurus, I'm drawn to say a little something else, Mike. And that's, to anyone who's listening, if you want to meet a guru, get up out of your seat right now, go into the bathroom or the bedroom and stand in front of the mirror and have a look at the person that you are, that your soul chose to be out of 8 billion other options on this planet. Have a look at the multi-dimensional being looking back at you. Look through their eyes, see the universe, and start to remember who you are. And once you do, through this type of work or anything, any other way, you realize that the guru you were looking for all along lives within.
Yeah, and it's very personal too. It's, I think the wisdom that you get from a guru is very general, right? But when you
Yeah,
get to tapping into that part of yourself, that deeply connected part of yourself, it's not broken, you don't need to fix anything, you're connected to all things through all time and space. And it has the answers, but it has the answers for you. What do you need to hear right now? What is the thing that is in your way? And it might just be the thing that you need to hear right now, not necessarily what you might hear in a year or 2 years or 5 years, but it's just the thing that's going to make you as an individual shift, whatever it is, maybe 1 degrees, maybe 2 degrees, but enough to get you to where you want to be,
yeah,
in this connected space.
absolutely. So, Mike, what about we'll do tips and books? What do you think?
Sure. Tips and books. Well, I remember that last time we recorded this podcast series, I asked everyone to write down what is in their heart.
Hmm.
The reason I investigated that, got them to investigate that, is that it's this alchemical pendulum. Like I want to be rich because I feel poor. I want to be connected with someone because I feel alone. Do you know what I mean? Like you're just always going to go there. But when you're in your heart, that is the fulcrum. It is the
Hmm.
aspect of you that has no opposite. It is the highest level truth, especially for this lifetime, the highest level truth that you are seeking. So for anyone that watched that episode, back and have a look at that list and then go, okay, who is the version of me that has all of this already? And not aspects that are watered down. I've tried doing this with clients and they need to be refocused all the time.
Hmm.
Uh, Simply because they'll go, oh yeah, but say, for instance, in this life, I'm super rich, but that always makes me lonely. No, no. What we're looking for is the part of you that has everything that your heart would love, which is whatever it might be, but not at the compromise of anything else. And then, if you next time you go into meditation, ask to speak to that person. And if you really want to dive in, obviously book a session, right? And we'll look into it. But I think just for the point of view of really exploring who that is, do that. Who is the part of you that has this all already, and where are they? What are they telling you? Get the information from them. Yeah, build a relationship with them. So that's my
Yeah,
hot tip for today.
yeah, beautiful. I love that. I love that. It's very self-empowering. Perfect.
What's our book, Pete?
Book today is called The Holographic Universe by Michael Talbot. And this is a book that was recommended to me by Michael Newton when I started to look at the quantum stuff. He said, Pete, if you're looking at quantum, you've got to read The Holographic Universe. I said, I've never heard of it. And now I've recommended it to dozens and dozens of people. Michael Talbot was an investigative journalist type fellow, and he wrote a number of books. And what he started to do was he put forward the concept that if we regard the universe as a hologram, the large and small being the same, the universe being a projection that's no more real than a hologram itself. And he quotes a couple of really well-known quantum physicists like David Bohm and Carl Prippan. And he postulates that if we take a holographic view of the universe, then the paranormal looks normal. And that, if we're living in a multiverse of energy that is outside of time and space, everything starts to make more sense and there is no more paranormal. And I've already regarded people as paranormal anyway, because people have often said to me over the years, I just want to know I'm normal. So, well, I'm really sorry, you're paranormal or even supernormal. So there is no normal. There's just societal expectations of how you should be. So this is a great book. It's been around a long time. Michael Talbot wrote this and published it when he was 36, and he died at 37. So it's like this was why he was here. This book, Holographic Universe, Michael Talbot. That's today's book.
Beautiful. Congratulations, Michael. Got it done.
He did indeed.
Fantastic. All right. Well, that was great. I love this particular, like out of all the things that we were going to talk about, this work is beautiful, and I would love to, I'm just so happy to be sharing this with people. So this is great.
Yeah, absolutely, Mike. It's great. And thanks to everybody who has been listening. We love sharing what we do. Thank you.